Hello and welcome back to Business Matters at the Hindu with me, K. Bharat Kumar. Today, Business Matters revisits a topic that we last touched upon a few months ago, December 2022, with regard to India's climate goals and its green investments. In March, the IMF put out a note, the International Monetary Fund put out a note indicating why India should quicken its green investments. It said that achieving net zero, that India had said it aimed to do by 2070, will require adjustments to how people live, work, and move about, and those adjustments will come at a high cost. First, the IMF said India expects to increase investments in coal-fired power plants to help power economic growth. But the IMF says that by limiting these investments, substantial irreversible fixed costs could be saved. Second, early scaling up of renewable energy allows for a more gradual policy adjustment, which may be less politically costly, and for a more continual adoption of new technologies. Costs, it said, could also be amortized over long periods. Before we go on to what India is doing with regard to its green investments, let's take a look at some pieces of data, again, all from the IMF. You may recall from earlier mentions in Business Matters episodes that nations across the world had committed at the COP21 Paris Agreement that they would put in all efforts to ensure that global warming or a change in temperature would be limited to 2 degrees Celsius over the long term compared with pre-industrialization levels. They had also committed that, okay, the outer limit is 2 degrees Celsius, but we will also pursue efforts to limit it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. For context, here's how India's average surface temperatures have changed. In the graph on your screens, just take a look at all the tall bars on the right. That is, with time, the change in temperatures has obviously been getting higher. In some years, we've already come close to the 1.2 degrees Celsius level. In an earlier episode of Business Matters, we have seen how a change in temperature up to 2 degrees Celsius can harm ocean life, polar ice, and life on Earth in general. Next, let us see which industries are the biggest polluters. In the chart on your screen, we see IMF data showing us that the electricity, gas, and air conditioning supplies generate the most carbon emissions. Though this data is from 2015, this is largely true, if not more so, even now. And next, of course, come the base metals such as iron and steel, which are also contributing significantly to carbon emissions. In a December statement, the government said India had continued decoupling economic growth from greenhouse gas emissions. In other words, for every unit of additional economic growth, we should not ideally need to generate the same level of carbon emissions as before. India's emission intensity of gross domestic product or GDP reduced by 24% between 2005 and 2016. The goal, it said, is to make it 45% by 2030. Emissions intensity is a proportion or a ratio. If emissions increase as much as your GDP grows, then emissions intensity is 100%. If it's 0%, then you've had no problem. You've not emitted any carbon dioxide into the atmosphere to generate GDP growth. Given that burning coal contributes the most to carbon emissions, global focus is on moving away from power plants that generate power from burning coal towards solar and wind power plants. A recent video by a sister publication, Business Line, indicated that India had built 91,730 megawatts of thermal-fired power plants, which is almost entirely from coal, between FY13 and FY17. In contrast, between FY24 and FY30, India plans to build 26,900 megawatts. This is a comparison between a 5-year period and then a 7-year period. Encouragingly, it is becoming costlier to put up a new coal-fired power plant. A report released earlier this month by the Power Ministry in India indicated that now it costs rupees 8.34 crore per megawatt if you want to put up a new coal-powered plant. To give you an idea, here's how costs have risen over time. It was less than 5 crore per megawatt in 2015. As you can make out a couple of examples there, you see a sub 5 crore per megawatt figure there on the extreme right corner of your screen. And then it rose almost to 7 crore per megawatt by 2019. All those figures pertain to the cost of putting up a power plant. What does this mean to power distribution companies that supply power to you and me at our homes and offices? Working backwards, experts tell us that the cost of producing 1 unit of electricity or per kilowatt hour of electricity from a coal-fired power plant comes to about 6 rupees 50 paise. Compare this with the cost of producing renewable energy. Solar and wind power plants can commit to selling power to power distribution companies at between 2 rupees 80 paise per kilowatt hour to about 3 rupees 30 paise, which means the cost of producing 1 unit of electricity from renewable sources is half as that produced from coal-fired plants. Obviously, this difference in pricing means a lot to India with regard to its commitments to meet its climate goals and as to how it will add capacity, how much would go to coal and how much would go to renewables. Let's see some data now. You can see on your screens that power plants fired by coal and lignite, both referred to as thermal sources, accounted for close to 53% of installed capacity. This was at the end of March 2022. At the time, solar and wind made up about 23.6%. Now, come to the present. In capacity addition that is either under construction or has been bid out, the evidence is in the changing focus towards renewables. Solar and wind here account for 68% of the total, and coal contributes less than 16%. Let's take a peek into the future. By 2030, solar and wind will account for 50.5% of installed capacity, while thermal power would occupy about 32% of the pie. That's all we have for now. Soon, we'll try and gather and present information to you as to whether any obstacles lie in our path to a coal-free future. What would you like to see? What are your preferences? Tell us in the comment section below and we'll try and deliver. And if you like this video, do not forget to like and share this one. And of course, please do subscribe to our channel. Till we meet again next week, have a lovely time ahead.